Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Wednesday edition of Journalist Hangout. I am Kemi Wale Adeoye. Today on the program, dozens, including school children, killed in Lokoja tanker fire, as well as Organised Labour tells Nigerians to get ready for mass action over electricity and fuel price hikes, plans total shutdown from September the 28th. Later on the program, COVID-19 second wave rages in Europe as Nigerian Airlines jettison physical distancing in their aircraft. And Journalist Hangout Midweek Special is on the predicament of tenants in this COVID-19 season. I'll be hanging out today with Babajide Kolade-Otitoju while Wale Adeoye will join us via Skype. Journalist Hangout starts now. There was fire on the confluence which brought a disaster of tragic proportions. 23 persons burned to death when a petrol tanker exploded in Lokoja, the KOGI state capital, earlier today. According to reports, a tanker loaded with petrol lost control as a result of brake failure exploding on the ever-busy Felele area of Lokoja, killing more than 20 people, including school children. Now, cars, tricycles were among valuables destroyed as a result of the incident. Meanwhile, Governor BELLO expressed shock over the fatal tanker explosion. In a statement by his chief press secretary, Onogo Mohammed, the governor described the explosion as the greatest tragedy the state has experienced in recent times. We begin our discussions on a sad note, I must add. Wale Adeoye and BKO here in the studio. Good evening to you both. Let me begin with Wale Adeoye. Black Wednesday, so to speak. What are your thoughts?
It's a very tragic development. My condolences to the families of those who lost their loved ones. It's a very unfortunate thing. It's an accident that could have been avoided. It was caused by human error because we read that there was a brake failure. If there was no brake failure, perhaps these 23 people, these innocent lives would have been saved. So it's, but it's not the first time we have had this kind of incidents. Across the country, it happens almost, frequently. So I hope this will lead to a kind of policy statement that will ensure that this kind of thing will not happen again. Probably these tanker drivers should not be allowed to ply our cities in broad daylight, where when workers are going to their workplaces, children are going to schools. And I think, the question of brake failure, it means that probably that trailer was not serviced, which belonged to the NLPC. Maybe there was no proper mechanical check before that trailer took off. It's a very unfortunate thing. It could have been avoided. And I hope that we are going to take the government, the federal government and the state government, the KOGI state government will take measures to ensure that this kind of tragic incidents do not happen again.
Well, BKO, Felele has been described as a very busy area. Many residents of KOGI and even travelers cannot, avoid that Felele area, which has also witnessed a lot of gory accidents.
Yes, and it happened at a very busy period of the day. Children were being taken to school. There is a pathetic case of a businessman based in Lokoja who sells or used to sell machines, sewing machines, who was taking his children to school, and he died along with his wife and 3 children. So it's like a whole family wiped out. This is really tragic, and I really feel for families, the survivors of the deceased persons, because they are the ones who now have to live with this agony for the rest of their lives, especially the tragic circumstances in which they lost these people. A lot of the vehicles on our roads lack roadworthiness, and the regulatory authorities are not effective enough in ensuring that only vehicles that have passed the roadworthiness test are free to ply our roads. Absolutely. A lot of the time, they just bribe their way and they get all these papers, even if they are not forged. So until we make it mandatory for this test to be carried out on vehicles to ascertain their roadworthiness, this sort of accidents won't stop. Even if we say that they should not move in daytime, articulated trucks bearing petrol, there's no way they won't move in daytime. It's just not possible. For example, from the north, vehicles come to Lagos, to the ports here, to load petrol because we don't have ports up north where they can go and load. So they all come to Lagos to load petrol. So they must travel in daytime. They must travel in daytime. That is just not possible.
So
even when they leave, you can see, because Lagos prefers that they don't move in daytime.
During the day.
You see that when you are going home at night, you see a lot of trailers. But some of them, they leave Lagos at night, but they will get to some towns and some cities in daytime. There's just no way we can stop them from moving in daytime. In some places, they will have to move in daytime. All we need to do is to ensure that only vehicles that have passed the roadworthiness test can use our roads. Why should anybody be driving a vehicle that its brakes cannot be trusted upon? So it's terrible.
Absolutely. There are so many what-ifs in this tragic event. Before we continue discussions here in the studio, we have Tosin Olagunji. He is one of the witnesses to the gory accident that happened in Lokoja in the morning. So he joins us via phone now from Lokoja. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us at this time and accept our condolences on this very tragic event. But for you and the experience of this morning, what is the most significant takeaway from the event?
Good evening, Shade Fola, and good evening, Jide.
Good evening.
And Wale Adeoye. It was a terrible blow on Lokoja today. First, the area is called Felele, not Felele. According to eyewitnesses that I spoke with there, it happened at about 7:30 rush hour. And that this has been happening for years. And that it started about 2011, and it occurs about the same time, the same spot every year, and that only 2016 was exempted. According to those who live around that place, we were told that drivers of tankers usually, when they leave NNPC filling station, they will switch off their engine and allow the vehicle to roll down the express. By the time they want to come back, it will be too late for them to hold the brake. That's what actually happened. And I spoke with a road safety officer who claimed we should not mention his name. He said that they called on fire service, the federal fire service in Lokoja, and that after picking the call, they now switched off, and there was no response to the event. So because of that, over 30 adults were evacuated, that's dead bodies. Over 16 children in a school bus, families in tricycles that you cannot even count. I think what should be done is, one, if these tricycles can be asked to leave the highways, I think it will be better. And to speak to drivers of those tankers should always put their cars, just as Jide said, in good order and not to take things for granted. You can imagine a plaza where travelers stop to eat. We call it GT Plaza. That place has been raised down as we speak. You can't even ascertain the exact figures.
All right.
I just got information that the Petroleum Tanker Drivers Union have been resisting the efforts of regulatory agencies to ensure that only vehicles that are roadworthy can load the product. You know, resisting, issuing threats and all that. So here we are.
Here we are. Indeed, Tosin Olagojo, thank you so much for speaking to us on TVC News. Let's try and get more discussions here on this topic before we move on to other areas for discussion. So, Wale Adeoye, with what you've heard and the reports that there was even late response by the fire service, which perhaps aggravated the situation, arguably, what more areas or what more lessons do you think we need to learn from to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Well, we need to look for short-term solutions and then long-term solutions. If it's possible for the KOGI state government, even though it's a federal highway, at least to put speed breakers on that highway so that any trailer that is plying that road at least will be compared to slow down, maybe at intervals of 10 meters in that particular area, since we have been told it's a ritual occurrence. It happens almost every year. Then the other thing is to look at the haulage system in the country. We need to look for a long-term solution where petroleum, inflammable items like petroleum will be transported by the rail system. Because that's what other countries do. So that when you are moving petrol from Lagos to Borno, you don't you don't use trailers. You know, you use the rail system. So I hope the government will speed up the completion of the rail system so that, you know, we can begin to transport, you know, elements like petroleum products through the railway system. In other countries, you don't see trailers everywhere like we see in this country. So we need a short-term solution and then a long-term plan to address this problem.
All right. Well, talking about fuel, we have to move on, you know, while we continue to monitor what is happening in KOGI State, in Filele specifically. But then talking about fuel, especially petrol and electricity, these two terms are like CMS twins in Nigeria. Socioeconomic well-being of citizens depend heavily on both. So any attempt to hike prices comes with some form of resistance by the populace. Organised Labour have now told Nigerians to get ready for mass action over hike in electricity tariff and fuel price. The labour unions in the country are set for total shutdown of the economy from next Monday. And the aim of Labour is to force governments to reverse the recent hike in electricity and fuel price. BKO, how justified is Organised Labour's position?
Yeah, it's their duty to protect the interest of their members, to ensure that their members get the best deal from employers of labor and even from government. They are a pressure group. So if prices of what I would describe as a security product, that's petrol, if its pump price gets jacked up and they don't do anything, their members will say their leaders have been bribed, they've been settled. So it's well in the character of labor unions to fight for the rights of their workers. If it was South Africa, by now they will be on the streets. The labor union in South Africa is extremely effective. It's not like what we have in Nigeria. In South Africa, some of what this grocery chain, some of what they do here to workers, they dare not do it in South Africa. The casualization of workers that they do here, you dare not do it in South Africa. You dare not. Because over there, workers know their rights. And they do not hesitate to go on strike. It's like the strike capital of the world. They do not hesitate to go on strike. You know? So this is the thing. The government has increased electricity tariff or has approved a hike in electricity tariff by almost 100%. People would want to know what government intends to do to cushion the effect of all of this. VAT too has gone up. Petrol moving from 145 or so to around 162 per litre. At a time when the president signed the minimum wage law, minimum wage bill into law since April 2019. 8 states in Nigeria are yet to even start paying.
Affected.
Now, it is under that same harsh economic environment, because we are in recession now. Even if we are not told, we know that we are in recession already. Because of the negative growth that we've had in quick succession, we are in recession as we speak. So now workers have to grapple with all of these nasty experiences. Of course, they are going to ask, what are you doing? What are you going to do? I suggested some time ago that if you were going to remove minimum wage, fine, I want you to remove it. Because we have succeeded in using it to enrich a lot of people. Ill-gotten money. We've used it to promote a culture of rent-seeking. Now, what are we going to do with the money? I suggested that states in our country, that they could then say, okay, Lagos State, I want to buy 10,000 buses. Out of what will come to me in the event of the removal of subsidy, part of what will come to me, I will set aside so amount of money, buy 10,000 buses. If we push thousands of buses into Lagos, the pain that commuters go through, the quantum of money that commuters spend from moving from point to point in Lagos will be saved, because government will not be exploiting commuters the way bus operators are doing. So,
because you're saying that remove fuel subsidy, not obviously removing minimum wage?
No. Right. I'm saying, look, fuel subsidy has been removed now.
Absolutely.
I asked there at that time that it was inevitable. Remove it, but put some measures in place that will cushion the effect. In Lagos, a lot of people feel the pain of commuting from one point to another and having to pay so much. And we don't have a rail system which is cheap, which is the greatest way of moving people from point to point. We are relying on our roads.
Paying so much, and what quality are they even getting for the riding experience?
So we are saying, okay, why don't you go ahead, buy thousands of buses? If we push thousands of buses, we'll put them on Lagos roads, a lot of the pains that people go through will not happen. Will not happen. Some people are paying more than 1,000 naira every day to go to work, and their salaries are not increased. So this is the reason why Labour will try to see what they can do. Maybe when they begin to meet with government will then say, okay, look, these are the concessions that we want to make, these are the steps that we want to make. Because whether we like it or not, the country is broke. Some people don't like it when I say, well, it's the truth. You are not going to stop me from saying it. The signs are there. The writing is on the wall. So this is the thing. We can't stop the removal of subsidy, but how do we mitigate the pains that this will inflict on our people? And until Labour hears something along that line, they are not likely to back down.
Absolutely. And they've even said as much. They also said that so we've privatized the power sector, and yet the government is still, funding it with at least 1.3 trillion naira over the past few years. Yet, why are we having this hike in electricity tariff? Wale Adeoye, what's your point?
Well, I think there are so many factors against this increase. If you look at what Nigeria is going through now, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of small-scale firms, they have not made profit for the past 6 months. A lot of people are being paid half salary. Some are not even being paid at all. Some people have lost their jobs, and they are in millions. People are becoming hopeless because of the national incidents, that are the global incidents of COVID-19. So I don't think the right thing to do, by any government is to increase electricity tariff and then back it up with increasing fuel. Almost on the same day. So this is going to push Nigerians to the extreme. It's going to make them to be more desperate in their quest to survive. It's going to make them to be more aggressive and, in fact, probably more violent. The NLC and the TUC, in fact, the TUC will have started the protest on 23rd, but I had to wait for the NLC so that they can harmonize with its 29 affiliate unions and about 4 million members across the country. I think Organized Labour is the best strategically positioned umbrella organization that can mobilize Nigerians. And we hope that they will fight this to a logical end. Because in the past, we have seen where Labour will come up that they want to defend the people, but midway, they will back down, and then the masses at the end of the day will be at the end of the short stick. So I hope this time around, they will fight this battle to the logical end, so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to make the government to bend backward, because governance is all about the people. And I think most Nigerians, majority of Nigerians, are not happy with this increase. It's going to impoverish millions of people, and it's going to make a lot of people to be further depressed by the situation.
Apparently, Labour is not buying any of the government's, arguments in defense of the latest increment in this critical sector, especially with Mr. Silva saying that the price of fuel is still much cheaper than in other parts of Africa. But even at that,
it's a silly argument,
right?
Because even the cost of living, you can't compare the cost of living, the value of your currency. All of the countries around us, their currencies are stronger. That is why even some of our farmers will prefer to push their produce across the border. Go to the north,
for profits.
Go to Yobe State, go to states that share borders with Nigeria Republic. You see vehicles loaded, some of them almost as high as a story building, moving across the border because they'll make more money. The currency is almost dead. So what you can buy in those countries with their currency, you cannot buy with your currency. And then they come and make an argument that makes no sense. You can't be making that kind of argument.
But how easy would it be to force government now, to switch over to the argument of the organized labor, as Mr. Adeoye here is saying?
TUC alone has 29 affiliate bodies. TUC alone.
Even the banks and other allied unions.
TUC, just TUC alone. TUC alone, if they are united, they can make the government to take action. Not necessarily reversing. I'm not saying they should reverse. But what are the steps that you are taking? Because in the past, we used to, at any point when we want to increase fuel price, we'll come up with some palliative measures. This time around, everybody is quiet. The government is not telling us what it intends to do. And the increase is much higher than we've had in previous years. So what are you going to do to reduce the burden that this inflicts on Nigerian workers? There has to be that conversation. That's why they need to engage the government. What are you going to do for the people? Right from even Abacha days, Abacha said, okay, the money that we save from an increase in the pump price of petrol, this is what we are going to do. He set up PTF. He put Buhari in charge. They used some of the funds to build roads, infrastructure, to buy drugs for hospitals, to improve infrastructure even in some of our schools. What do we want to do at this time that will help reduce the pain on the Nigerian people? I don't think it's such a bad thing to say, okay, states, we agree now. All of these states will benefit from this removal of subsidy. Now, what are you going to do collectively? The president has to meet with governors and say, okay, let's do this for our people. We can't simply be watching our people suffer.
BK, well, that said, within the constraints of our time, let's take a few moments now to cool off. We'll come back. More discussions ahead. Stay with us. You're watching Journalists Hangout on TVC News. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, like a hydra-headed monster, the COVID-19 pandemic appears to be defying measures to halt its spread. A second wave of the pandemic is raging in Europe, with many countries like the United Kingdom on the verge of imposing a second round of lockdown. The fear of a spike is also palpable in other countries, like here in Nigeria, where airlines have jettisoned physical distancing in their aircraft, feeling a possible second wave of spread. Wale, the airport officials now have said that physical distancing is not so much needed in the cabin as much as it is needed at the terminals. Hence, this non-adherence to physical and social distancing rules.
I don't think they can make their own rule outside the global guidelines as defined by the World Health Organization and other health institutions. They might say that they find it very difficult to implement social distancing, but not to say that social distancing is not important.
Oh.
Because that is the best way you can avoid the spread. And I think if they are not ready to cope with the rule, then the federal government has to probably do something about it. In as much as profit is very important, but it's not also as important as human lives. We have to look at what is happening globally and learn to know that it is not yet over. From the signals we are seeing all over the world, and given the fact that this pandemic actually came from abroad, it's not indigenous to us, then we need to take extra measures, because there's nothing as important as protecting the lives of our people in the face of this scourge.
BKO, when you compare what is happening at our airports, as you know, the airports have since reopened, with what is occurring in Europe now, at least 5 million cases reported. UK is one of the hardest hit, and further lockdowns are looming. In fact, more measures have even already, been taken to avert a further, total breakdown or total calamity, more than what we are seeing at the moment. What lessons should Nigeria learn from what is playing out in Europe?
No, we just must not relax. We just must not relax. And what is happening in Europe is a clear signal to us that we should not make ourselves wide open. We suffered from making ourselves wide open, from not taking measures to shut our airspace in good time. The government at that time said no, that they were not going to stop the Chinese and the Italians who are coming into our country. But we paid dearly for it. The countries that shut down quickly, countries like Singapore, countries like Taiwan that quickly shut down, today, when they are talking about response to COVID-19 and the effectiveness of response, those are the countries that they talk about. So we waited and waited until this thing was brought to our door. And now we've had to spend so much money to curtail it. Prevention, they say, is better than cure. What we were told initially was that, the aisle seats, the aircraft will be removed so that we can have
more room.
Yes. The last time I traveled, the only time I traveled since March,
right,
I told the airport staff that I was not going to sit and the seat assigned to me, because I didn't know that it was going to be like Wale Adeoye. We were packed like sardine. Packed like sardine. And invariably, a business class seat that was not occupied was given to me. So I had to sit there, and I felt comfortable, because even thankfully beside me there was nobody there. Not all the business class seats were
occupied.
Yes. So that was where I sat. And I liked it like that. I thought that, I haven't boasted to Nigerians that that was what they were going to do. The aviation authorities will go ahead and do that. Why do we take people for granted in our country? We are allowing the airlines to pack the cabin full with people and risking their lives. How did this thing even spread across the world? It was through air travel. Through air travel. So it's still the most dangerous means by which you can contract the disease. Air travel, the cabin is airtight. You are breathing into each other's noses. You sit close to one another. Yes, they are not serving food on flights, but that's not the only way by which you can contract it.
Can be transmitted. Well, this, in spite of the reports that, okay, the aircraft or the average cabin, are even more cleaner than, hospital wards, as the argument have been put out.
Who are the people saying that?
But in any case, the FG of Nigeria, the federal government has also, gone on to say, raise an alarm about how Nigerians are deviating from these safety protocols. I recall
That's
on
why
Monday,
I said we should not, we should not relax.
Right. I recall Boss Mustafa was saying that, face masks have become non-existent. If at all, you
States
see chin masks.
States are not even testing anymore.
You see chin masks. And as
States are not testing anymore.
Which is also
That's why the
another
figures
concern.
are low. They are not testing. They are not testing.
Unlike Europe, where it's not an issue.
They are testing.
They're testing.
America now has the capacity to do 1 million tests a day. One of the reasons that behind the rise in figures is also the improvement in the capacity to test in Europe. Is one of those reasons. Yes, they can test much more than they could test before. So the figures will rise. But there is real concern that even the UK, before the end of the year, if things continue like this,
With
UK could go
coming,
to like 50,000 cases a day.
With winter coming, Wale Adeoye, what are your thoughts in this regard? So the WHO is saying, okay, let's learn, let everyone learn now with winter coming and more projections.
Yeah, well, the attitude of the government usually influences the attitude of the citizens. If you go to the streets now across the country, nose mask is no longer fashion. People are no longer, using a lot of people. I mean, the number of people using nose masks has reduced, and it's because of this contemptuous attitude towards the pandemic that the thing is over. And just like Gide rightly said, the states are not doing enough testing, so there is a kind of reinforcement of an illusion that we have escaped, finally escaped the scourge. I hope we are not going to have a second wave of infections. And maybe another round of
lockdowns.
I think government needs to take more effective measures to learn from what is going on all over the world. That is not over. We should continue with the safety protocols everywhere, in schools, in marketplaces. We should just excite patients a little bit, because even Ghana is considering another round of lockdown. So Nigeria is a huge country, with about 200 million people.
Israel.
We are afraid that we need to really avoid a situation where we are going to have, an endemic situation. So government needs to set that standard, set the standard so that citizens can take more precaution instead of just relaxing and thinking that everything is over. It is not yet over. And I think at this level, personal responsibility in the face of failure of government is very important. Individuals should take personal responsibility to ensure that they don't fall victim into COVID-19 pandemic.
Final words on this topic, BKO. The government has even gone on to warn, indeed, that if we are not careful, further lockdowns will be reached, but also put pressure on about 8 states now to improve testing. About 1 billion naira has been given to each of these states. Will we get, more progress?
States are not prepared to test. They don't want to spend money.
But now they've been given. It may not. The argument might now be that how sufficient is that?
See. It's not just about testing. When you test and that person is confirmed to be carrying the virus, you then take over the management of that person. Don't forget, even the tests are very expensive. It costs so much to do those tests. Now, the management of the person, taking care of the person when it's in hospital and all that, becomes the responsibility of government.
The state.
That is why some of those governors ran away and claimed that their states
are free of the virus.
Something that they cannot scientifically defend. Something that really makes no sense. In a country like this, a state will now say, oh, just our state alone has no COVID-19. Whereas some of those states have the worst sanitation record in our country. People still defecate on hills, on top of hills and in bushes, and they want us to believe that they are cleaner. How are you cleaner than the rest of the country? How did you manage to lock coronavirus away? Is it juju you use or what? They didn't want to spend money. Now, having spent money in the beginning, they are pulling back now gradually. And you can see that PTF is complaining that only about 5 states are still testing. So if they are not testing, how did we come to the realization or the belief that we are flattening the curve? That's why I agree with the NMA that the figures coming from NCDC are not figures to be believed, because the governments have deliberately refused to allow testing to take place, and once you don't test, there's nothing to report to
now
NCDC.
They've put the challenge to the public. Come forward, come and test. There are free testings, except for people who need the testing result for traveling. Well, let's rest our conversation on this topic and now take a break to return with more. Stay with us. You're watching Journalists Hangout now. Time for our midweek special, and we're talking about the predicament of tenants in Nigeria, especially in this COVID-19 season. While Nigeria continues to ease the lockdown imposed due to the coronavirus pandemic, many Nigerians are grappling with the cost of living. For many cities in the country, like Lagos here, it's a tough time for tenants who are finding it hard to cope with house rent. TVC News' Karima Salami finds out why in this special report.
The economic impact of coronavirus remains a major problem for Nigerians. Every day brings a different challenge. For renters, the story has been a disturbing trend of default in payments occasioned by the problems of lack of functional mortgage system.
The mortgage companies, if they can't get from the National Housing Fund, what they go to? They go to get money or funds from the commercial banks where money is available for trading. So that becomes a challenge in its own end. And that's where we are in this country. We need to really get ourselves together and do a proper roadmap.
For most Nigerian landlords who adopted the long-term rent payment system, the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on the real estate market is nothing but news. Their tenants are grinding their teeth with leaking wallets.
My mom actually just called me around, was it May or April, that they've increased their house rent, which happened to be the person that makes the payment. So in that aspect, directly, it has affected me.
The unlawful practice that allows most landlords in the major cities force their tenants to make down payments of not less than 1 year has become another subject of controversy. In some cases, tenants are expected to pay rent 2 years upfront.
I don't know how I will cope. Though the payment has not been made, we were given a month notice to make payment from July, and this is September. I've not been able to pay.
Many tenants could not meet their obligations. We all know that funds became scarce. People were not earning much income, except those who are already in the salary scale. But preferably the government. You are sure that you get your monthly salary. But those in the private sector, some of them are being owed.
With one of the most rigid rent payment systems in Africa, Nigeria has the majority of landlords collecting upfront payments on apartments. This is despite the fact that most tenants receive their income on a monthly basis. An endless housing crisis, coupled with a poor housing policy and greedy landlords, means renters in Nigeria are having to double up to meet payment obligations as the country continues to gallop through the pandemic. But at a time like this, when coronavirus has almost brought economic activities to a standstill in Nigeria, Some landlords are making a difference. One of such rare Nigerians is a 64-year-old Madam Ezenwa Emos, who has slashed the rent for tenants. I sought to know what prompted her to do this in a time when others are taking undue advantage of tenants to demand more.
Because of the problem in the country, it's very difficult for people. That time of epidemic, people did not go to work. We were indoor throughout, no money, no food. So increasing house rent now, it does not help those tenants. That's why I say, let me help.
While few landlords who collect rent on a monthly basis are seeing high default rates, as some Nigerians have either lost their jobs or have their salaries slashed by their employers. Madam Ezenwa thinks differently.
Many people troop in every day, every month, every year. So as they come in, the increase of house rent enter. Let government give us free hands so that we can afford. Give us even the so-called land use. We're supposed not to pay. We're supposed not to pay land use. I'm a retiree. They should help retirees not to pay land use.
A report by the estate agency professionals says more than 60% of tenants will not be able to pay their house rents in Nigeria this year due to the coronavirus pandemic and its crippling impact on household income. But tenants like Patience Onweke are happy they won't be part of these statistics.
Very excited. It's only God that searches her that know how I feel, because it's not easy. Mama just do it for me because no way to get the money. I don't have anybody, no mama, no papa, no husband.
With rising job losses, salaries on hold or slashed, the residential and commercial property market has been recording steady decline this year, and if the situation continues, analysts fear the worst.
For commercial offices, some people are shrinking their spaces because the space has been vacant for how long, in spite of the fact that they have their equipment there. They are not occupying the place because a lot of people are working from home. The banks, you will see that not all the banks are opening at the same time. They tell you per week, this branch will open, that branch will not open. So that tells you that they can forgo one branch and their operations will still go on. So a lot of things are really happening. We are not seeing the total effects of this on rental income yet.
Over 92% of Nigerians, only about 8% of Nigerians live on income of about 60,000 naira and above. That simply means the only population, the only number of Nigerians that live and can even afford properties, their own home, is less than 1%. Those who live on income of about 1 million a month and above. So if you look at it demographically, if you look at it from the financial standpoint, you will discover that these are huge challenges that we must tackle. Having identified that problem, 20 million housing units requiring 120 trillion naira to fix over the next 30 years. 98% of Nigerians legitimately, without compromising, cannot afford their own homes based on the current fiscal structure that we have in Nigeria.
For now, Nigerians continue to struggle to meet periodic obligatory payments in the face of dwindling economic fortune. An increase in default rates is affecting the traditional real estate players and landlords who are highly dependent on rental income.
Some people, their own business is relying on rental income. They have a lot of houses, and even when you're talking of retirees, a lot of retirees built those houses as their own retirement benefits, or some of them collected their retirement benefits and used it to build the houses so that they can have sustainability. You know, the challenges our retirees are faced with government and all that. So at that point, it becomes difficult to begin to dictate to them that don't increase rent and all that. But I think this is a matter of interface between the property owners, property managers, and the landlord and the tenants.
As everyone continues to hope for the light at the end of the tunnel, The few landlords who are slashing their rents may be the new examples of good citizenship in the face of failing housing policies. Karima Salami, TVC News, Lagos.
So much to ponder on and discuss in that report that we just aired. So we can only allow a few comments at this time before we round up the program. Wale Adeoye, one significant point in Karima's report was also that the housing system in Nigeria is rigid, and doesn't favor the average tenant at all.
Yes, it's a question of demand and supply. There are millions of people who are looking for a place to put their head, but there are very few houses available. And after food, I think housing is the most important thing. So we need to strengthen the intervention of the government. The pension fund should be more effective. There is no reason why you can serve government for 35 years and you don't retire into your home. Then the National Housing Fund, which appears not to be effective, needs to be re-energized, because housing is a major problem, and cities like Lagos, which is the fastest growing city, almost the fastest growing in the world, we have about 600,000 people moving almost every year, is worst hit by this housing problem. So the government needs to, we need an action plan. The state and federal government is a major problem that I'm so glad about this report. People are going through stress. In many places, about 10 people live in just one room. So I think, and even people that are working spend about 50 to 70% of their annual income on paying rent. So we need an effective housing policy that can make people to have access to housing as one of the most essential aspects of human living.
Indeed. And on the flip side too, as a benevolent, as we are having, landladies, landlords, being, during the lockdown, there were even cases of landlords who reached out to their tenants with essential food items. But then there is a general need for the government to come to their aid. Madam Esenwa was saying that, okay, the government should also, do away with land use charges. But I know that Governor Sanwo-Olu reverted the land use charge to pre-2018 stage. But then there is still a clarion call that more needs to be done for these homeowners. Well,
for me, I'm much more concerned about the ordinary Nigerian. Where does he rest his head? Population growth is growing at a geometric pace, and delivery of housing infrastructure cannot match population growth. So maybe some of us will end up sleeping under the bridges, because I'm really scared at the rate things are going. More and more Nigerians won't be able to afford rent. Go to Abuja, go to Port Harcourt, go to Warri. It's extremely expensive to pay for accommodation. And then what do? A lot of people end up stealing government money, being corrupt, stealing other people's money because
of housing.
The basic necessities of life they want to take care of. They want to pay school fees of their children so that their children are not sent back home disgraced from school. They want to pay for accommodation. There are people who pile pressure on you and me that, look, I've not paid my rent. Please assist me. We are getting to that because it's just difficult. As Obiareri said, only 98% of Nigerians cannot build a house of their own. That's terrible. Government has to come up with effective mortgage system and effective housing policy that will ensure that we reduce the number of the homeless.
And even talking about options right now, whether the tenants can even come forward and present moratorium to their landlords that they honestly cannot even pay.
Government doesn't seem to be bothered. You see, people, it's a contract between you and your landlord. How many times or how many occasions will government intervene or get involved? But there should be a policy that will assist the ordinary Nigerian to be able to afford a house of his own, especially people who are earning legitimate income, right.
Well, Mrs. Otitoju and Wale Adeoye, I thank you both for your contributions on the program today. That's Hour 7 on Journalists Hangout for today. You can join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can also watch on other platforms showing on your screen at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria, and send us your feedback to journalistshangout@tvcnews.tv. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Kemi Kolade-Otitoju. Bye for now. God bless Nigeria.